Was kicked off a cruise I paid $90,000 for, so I took it all back. My name's Melissa Harris, I'm 35, and I run a SaaS company based in Seattle. Not in the background, not as someone's assistant. I founded it. From scratch. The company's currently valued at just over $300 million, but to hear my family talk about it, you'd think I was still sitting in my childhood bedroom hacking together little websites on dial-up. My parents, Robert and Linda, don't get it. They never have. They come from this old-world idea of prestige, titles, institutions, suits, and briefcases. My dad was a senior partner at a law firm for decades. My mom didn't work much outside the home, but she treated social standing like it was a full-time job. I was supposed to go to Yale, marry a respectable man, host garden parties, and raise kids who play cello and speak 3 languages by 10. Instead, I dropped out of law school after 1 semester, built a prototype in a crappy studio apartment, lived off protein bars and ramen for 2 years, and pitched to 37 VCs before I got a yes. Now I've got offices downtown, a staff of over 300, clients in 14 countries, and enough traction to make acquisition offers come in every quarter. And yet, every time I visit home, I'm still Melissa with her little tech project. The star of the family is my older sister, Courtney. She married Dr. Nathan Blake, a vascular surgeon with a cleft chin and 0 personality. Every Thanksgiving turns into a brag fest about which conference he's speaking at next, how their twins just started violin, how Courtney's running the fundraising board for their private preschool. My mom beams through all of it, and my dad acts like Nathan personally performed CPR on the American economy. Meanwhile, I get questions like, do you still have that little office downtown? Or so are you still working with computers? Working with computers. Like I'm fixing printers at Best Buy. What makes it worse is that I've been quietly supporting my parents financially for over 6 years. Their health insurance? That's me. Their property taxes? Me. The Audi Q5 in their garage. I wired the down payment. When their roof started leaking in 2021, I Venmo'd them the full quote from the contractor before they even asked. Not once have they acknowledged it beyond a passing, "Oh, thanks, sweetheart." They act like the money just appears. Like they deserve it. Like it's Nathan's by extension because he's a doctor, and I'm just someone who spends too much time online. One time I tried to set boundaries, just once. It was Christmas 2 years ago. They were going on about how expensive everything had gotten and how those SaaS things were probably at risk in the recession. I reminded them, gently, that I'd locked in multi-year contracts and that enterprise churn was low in our sector. My dad cut me off with, "Well, we'll just have to hope the bubble doesn't burst, huh?" I said, "Even if it did, I've got savings and equity in 4 properties. I'm not worried." And my mom looked at me and said, "Don't be cocky, Melissa. That's very unattractive in a woman." I just stared at her. Courtney, of course, stayed silent. That's her specialty, staying clean and quiet and smug. Later that same night, I overheard my dad on the phone with his old college roommate talking about how Melissa never really fulfilled her potential, but at least Courtney did well for herself. Courtney, who hasn't worked a day since her wedding, who threw a tantrum when she was offered a part-time fundraising position and said it would interfere with Pilates and school drop-offs. At dinner, when Nathan was talking about a new robotic technique he was experimenting with, everyone leaned in like he was cracking the Da Vinci Code. I made a passing comment about optimizing user retention through machine learning, and my mom said, "Could you not talk about your tech stuff during dinner?" Not everyone understands that lingo. I've been on panels with CEOs who built billion-dollar companies. I've been invited to speak at conferences. I've hired alumni from the very schools my parents drooled over when I was in high school. But in my family's eyes, I'm still some girl tinkering with code in her spare time. And I let it go, again and again, until this past summer, when it finally got to me in a way I couldn't swallow anymore. My parents called to ask for help covering some unexpected dental bills. It was a pretty big amount, but nothing that would seriously dent my finances. I said yes, wired the money, and didn't even ask for a thank you. Then 2 weeks later, my mom posted this long Facebook update about how Courtney and Nathan have always been the rock of our family, supporting us through thick and thin. No mention of me. Not once. She even added a photo from a recent dinner at Courtney's house with the caption, "Grateful for our generous children." I wasn't even invited to that dinner. So I commented. Not passive-aggressive. Not dramatic. Just this. "Glad I could help with the dental stuff. Hope you're feeling better, Mom." She deleted the comment in under 5 minutes. And when I texted her about it, she said, "Melissa, don't make things awkward." That was the moment it clicked. It's not that they don't know what I've built. They just don't care. Because I didn't build it in a way they respect. Because I didn't follow their version of success. Because I didn't marry a man with a title and a white coat and a mutual fund. I built my own empire, and in their eyes, that makes me less than, not more. So now I'm sitting here, thinking about how I've spent the last decade chasing validation from people who never planned on giving it. People who smile in front of me and erase me behind my back. People who take my money, my time, my care, and then act like I'm some footnote in my sister's perfect life. And for the first time, I'm seriously considering cutting them off. I don't even know what exactly I was chasing anymore. Maybe just a moment, one single moment where they'd look at me and say, "We're proud of you." That's all I wanted. Not a plaque, not a headline, not even an apology for the years of condescension. Just that one line, spoken with sincerity. It was stupid, I know that now, but at the time it felt like something worth reaching for. And when we closed the biggest deal in the company's history, a multi-year enterprise contract worth $27.5 million, I thought, this is it. This is the moment. If this isn't enough, nothing ever will be. So I did what I always do when I feel that familiar ache of not being enough. I went big. 12-day Mediterranean cruise. Ultra-luxury line. Suites with balconies and butlers and marble bathrooms. Private excursions in every port. Full buyouts of restaurants on board for just the 6 of us. I booked it all. Malta, Dubrovnik, Santorini, Capri, Monaco, Barcelona. Not a single corner cut. I even hired a travel concierge to handle the onboarding paperwork and luggage transfers so my mom wouldn't have to worry about international chaos, or whatever she calls leaving the country. $92,000. That's what it came to after everything. I paid for it in full. No installment plans, no points, no split the cost later nonsense. I just wired the amount, and a week later a leather-bound welcome packet showed up at my house with our itinerary embossed in gold foil. It was beautiful. It felt like the kind of thing rich people did for legacy. And for once, I wanted my family to feel that. To feel what I'd built. The invitation email I sent was carefully worded. I didn't mention numbers. I didn't list the cost. I didn't make it transactional. I just said I wanted to celebrate with the people who mattered most to me. I told them it was a thank you, even though they'd never actually supported me. I told them I loved them. I even threw in a no need to pack formal wear. It'll all be handled. My dad's reply was one line. Is there at least golf on the ship? Not wow. Not that's generous. Not even a basic, human, thank you. Just golf. Courtney responded with, can we check if the kids will have enough entertainment? They're not used to sitting still for long. She copied Nathan, who added a bullet-pointed list of dietary restrictions, nap schedules, and something called screen time limits, which I ignored. They weren't bringing the twins, thank God, but apparently they were still planning to talk about them at every meal. My mom didn't reply at all until the week before departure. And when she did, it was just, we'll need help figuring out what to wear. I'm not sure my evening dresses still fit. That was it. No excitement. No questions about ports or cabins or excursions. Just a casual mention of her closet. Still, I smiled through it. I arranged fittings for my mom and Courtney at a designer boutique in Bellevue. Sent a stylist to their houses. Paid for alterations. I even had spa packages delivered to their doors as a pre-cruise gift. I told myself this would be different. This would change things. It didn't. The first day on board, they walked onto the ship like they were touring a Holiday Inn. My dad looked around at the marble floors and crystal chandeliers and said, so this is the boat, huh? Nathan immediately asked where the gym was. Courtney took a selfie near the atrium and said, it's giving Titanic, but like, the rich people side. My mom just muttered something about how the air conditioning made her sinuses dry. That first night, I arranged a private dinner on the aft deck. 5 courses. Wine pairing. Sunset over the Adriatic. It was perfect. I wore a deep blue silk dress I'd been saving for years. And for the first 20 minutes, I let myself believe I was part of something. That I belonged. Until Courtney started talking about how exhausting Nathan's hospital schedule had been lately and how hard it was managing the house while he was in surgery 12 hours a day. My mom nodded like she understood the depths of Courtney's sacrifice. I offered a toast. To family, to health, to being together, and my dad interrupted me to ask if the wine was local or imported. 12 days. Every day was like that. We docked in Dubrovnik, and I'd booked us a private Game of Thrones tour because I remembered Courtney was obsessed with the show. She spent the entire ride complaining that it was hotter than she expected. My mom kept asking if we could cut it short because her sandals were giving her blisters. In Santorini, I arranged for a private catamaran and dinner under the stars. My dad asked if there was beer on board, and then spent most of the trip asleep under a towel. Monaco, I thought, would finally impress them. I got us into a private tour of the prince's vintage car collection. Nathan wandered off halfway through and asked if there was a cigar lounge nearby. The last straw came in Barcelona. It was the final night, and I'd gone all out. Booked a Michelin-starred chef for a custom tasting menu on board. I wore red, a color I never wear, but something about that night made me feel bold. I'd even prepared a small speech. Not dramatic. Just a quiet reflection on how far we'd come and how much I appreciated being able to share this with them. And just as I stood up, glass in hand, my dad looked up from the appetizer and said, "So Melissa, are you dating anyone yet? Or still married to your laptop?" I froze. Everyone laughed. Even my mom. Courtney smiled with that tight, pitying look she gets. The one that says she's above you, but she's trying not to show it. I sat back down. Didn't finish the toast. Didn't say a word the rest of the meal. They never said thank you. Not once. 12 days. 6 figures. Private everything. And not a single, genuine, heartfelt thank you. Just complaints, requests, jokes at my expense. By the time we disembarked in Rome, I was done smiling. I paid the crew their tips, thanked the concierge, and watched my family walk away toward the airport shuttle like I was the assistant who'd planned the trip instead of the person who paid for every last inch of it. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat on the balcony and stared at the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, feeling like a complete idiot. Like I'd just spent $92,000 to buy love that was never for sale in the first place. It didn't take long for things to turn. I think I knew it would happen the second I saw the way Courtney's eyes lit up during the welcome cocktail hour. Not at the champagne or the view, but at the other passengers. There was this couple from Connecticut who ran some generational wealth fund, and the husband used to golf with a senator. There was a woman whose late husband had been a diplomat in Geneva, and whose earrings probably cost more than my first year of rent in San Francisco. These were the types of people my parents had always tried to emulate from a distance. And now here they were, suddenly shoulder to shoulder, dressed in linen and pearls, sipping dry Riesling and talking about property in the south of France. As if that phrase meant anything to most people. I was the one who put them there. I bought the tickets. I chose the ship. I upgraded the suites. But once we stepped on board, I stopped existing. It started slow. The first few excursions, I thought they just lost track of time. I'd come out to the lobby in my flats and sun hat, waiting for the van to the vineyard tour, only to find out they'd already left. Or I'd get to the dock for the tender boats and hear from the crew that your family joined another group already. At first I laughed it off. I figured maybe they didn't understand the schedule. Maybe they were tired of my hyper-planning. I told myself I was overthinking it. By day 5, I knew better. They had stopped including me on purpose. They started going to dinners with other passengers, people with names they could drop into conversation later. Robert and Elise, whose son was an ambassador. Martin, who had a villa in Sardinia. Courtney started talking about these people like they were old friends, like she'd known them forever. Elise says the lavender in Provence is best in July. Robert told us about a little place in Positano that isn't in the guidebooks. My mom started nodding along as if she'd always been on the same level. My dad laughed louder than he had in years. They were glowing. And I was the one standing there with a glass in my hand, wondering why I was even there at all. At dinners, I'd sit quietly while they recapped the afternoon's adventures I hadn't been invited to. They never addressed the fact that I hadn't been there. It was like I'd become invisible. And when I did try to speak, when I tried to tell a story or share something from my own life, Courtney would glance at her wine like she was checking her reflection, Nathan would excuse himself to take a call, and my mom would tilt her head and offer a soft, "That's nice, dear." Like I'd shown her a finger painting and not talked about negotiating a 7-figure contract. The silence hurt more than anything they said. But it wasn't always silent. One night, halfway through the trip, I walked out onto the back deck just before midnight. The sea was calm, and the breeze was cool enough to make me wish I'd brought a shawl. I wasn't looking for anyone. I just needed air. But then I saw them. My dad and 2 of the other men from the upper deck, all in cream-colored blazers and pressed slacks, drinking whiskey and laughing in that way men do when they think no one's watching. I heard my name. I didn't move. One of the men said something I couldn't catch, and then my dad answered, low but not quite enough. He said, "Mel's brilliant, sure, but she doesn't really fit into this world. She doesn't get it." The glass door behind me caught a gust of wind and clattered against its frame. The laughter stopped. My father looked over his shoulder and saw me standing there. His mouth tightened for half a second, just enough for me to know he hadn't meant me to hear it. But he didn't apologize, didn't call out, just turned back to his drink and said something else I couldn't hear. I went back to my room and didn't come out for 2 days. I skipped the next 2 ports. I stayed in bed with the curtains drawn and my phone on airplane mode, watching the same episode of some Netflix show over and over again just to drown out the sound of my own thoughts. Nobody came to check on me. No knocks. No texts. Not even a courtesy note under the door. They were off at some beach club in Corsica, or tasting wine in Provence, or rubbing shoulders with whatever European retiree made them feel like they belonged. They had moved on, seamlessly, into a life they always thought they deserved. And I, the person who built the bridge to that life, wasn't even given a seat at the table. The next time I saw them was at dinner, on the second to last night. I hadn't planned to go, but I couldn't stand the idea of them returning home and telling people I'd hid in my room the whole time. So I showed up, sat in my assigned seat, ordered the fish, and smiled politely through every course. No one asked where I'd been. No one offered even a surface level "we missed you." It was like I'd never left. That night, in the hallway outside the suites, I stood in front of the door to my parents' cabin for almost 10 minutes, staring at it. I kept waiting for something in me to push me forward, to knock, to ask why, to demand answers. But nothing came. I turned around and went back to my room. There was nothing left to say. I don't know what made me call Jamie. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the ceiling looked exactly the same every morning when I woke up. Clean, bland, not a single detail to anchor myself to. Or maybe it was because I needed to hear one voice that didn't speak to me like I was a burden, a punchline, or worse, an invisible thing just floating behind the scenes. I didn't even check the time difference. I just opened my laptop, flipped off airplane mode, and hit call. Jamie picked up with a yawn, still in her hoodie, probably sitting in our office back in Seattle with half a protein bar in one hand and a code deployment window open on her screen. "Melissa? Jesus, it's like 5:30 here. You okay?" I didn't say anything for a second. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt thick. I hadn't spoken out loud all day. "You want me to fly out and burn the ship down?" she asked. That made me laugh and then cry, both at once. It was the kind of laugh that chokes on its own breath. "Talk to me," she said. So I did. I told her everything. About being left behind. About the dinners, the excursions, the moment I heard my dad say I didn't belong. I didn't embellish or try to play it down. Just laid it out plain, the way we always had when we were building something together and one of us hit a wall. She listened without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair and stared at me through the screen. "Melissa, you paid for all of this." "I know. No. I mean literally. You paid for every bed, every drink, every shrimp canopy, every little gelato spoon they're licking on shore. You built the life that made this possible. This is your cruise. So why are you playing by their rules?" I didn't answer. "You act like they're royalty you're trying to impress, but they're just people who treat you like crap. You're not the lost little girl anymore. You're the one holding the damn checkbook. Stop giving them the throne. Take it back." That silence came again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was clear. I ended the call an hour later, after Jamie made me promise, swear on our Series A paperwork, that I would do at least one thing on this cruise for me. Not them. Me. The next morning, I didn't go to breakfast. I didn't even put on makeup. I walked straight to the guest relations desk in leggings and a hoodie, hair in a bun, sunglasses still on, and asked to speak to the service manager. I had read the fine print when I booked. I knew Clause 8.4 of the charter agreement gave me discretion over cabin assignments for any guests under my booking code. I had brushed past it originally, never imagining I'd need it. Now I did. I asked, politely, but firmly, that my suite be changed to the owner's suite. I had seen it during the tour. 2 floors, wraparound balcony, private hot tub, dining room, a library. A damn Steinway in the corner like this was some Bond villain penthouse. It was available, and I knew it. I had the ship manifest saved. Then I handed over a list of new assignments for the others. My parents, Courtney, and Nathan could enjoy their remaining days in the standard cabins on deck 2, port side, below the waterline. No balcony, porthole windows. Same meals, same staff, but no suite-level privileges. The woman behind the desk blinked. "Ma'am, are you sure? That will be quite a change for them." I smiled. "No, it's exactly the change they need." She asked if I wanted to inform them myself or if I preferred the staff to handle the transition. I told her I wanted no part of the conversation. An hour later, my luggage was moved. My key card was upgraded. A bottle of Veuve was already chilling on the teak table near the balcony. I opened it with no fanfare and stood in the center of my new living room, barefoot, holding a glass, listening to the sea. For the first time in days, I felt still. I felt something close to peace. I didn't care if they were angry. I didn't care what Courtney would say or how my mom would gasp or how my dad would grumble about the stairs. They didn't get to write the rules anymore. They didn't even bring a pen. I was already in the owner's suite when it happened. I had just finished changing out of my swimsuit after spending the afternoon reading on the private deck, watching the waves turn gold under the late sun. The air had that clean, endless feel you only get in the middle of the sea, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't even feel nervous. Just present. Then the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, practiced. Guest relations, informing me that the family had returned and had been notified of the changes. I thanked her, hung up, walked into the main salon, and poured myself a glass of sparkling water. No ice, no garnish. I stood by the window and waited. It didn't take long. There was a knock, fast and hard. Not polite. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the door slowly, just enough to see all three of them standing in the hallway. Courtney was red-faced, still in her wide-brimmed straw hat and white jumpsuit. My mom looked stunned, like the news hadn't fully landed yet, her clutch bag dangling loosely from her fingers. My dad stood in the back with both hands on his hips, staring at me like I was a waitress who had just dropped a steak in his lap. What the hell is this? Courtney snapped, before I could say anything. The staff just handed us keys to some basement rooms with no view. Is this some kind of joke? I didn't respond right away. I stepped back into the suite and let the door hang open. The light from inside hit the hallway, warm and perfect. It's not a joke, I said finally. I changed the arrangements. You can't do that, my mom said, voice high and shaking. That's not how this works. You don't just move people like furniture. Yes, I can, I said. Check the contract. Clause 8.4. My dad stepped forward then. His tone wasn't loud, but it was that low, authoritative voice he used whenever he thought someone was embarrassing themselves. Melissa, whatever point you're trying to make, this isn't the way. You're acting out. That phrase hit something in me. Not because it was new, but because it wasn't. It was exactly the kind of thing he always said to keep the upper hand. Like the moment someone challenged him, they must be hysterical, overreacting, immature. I'm not acting out, I said. I'm correcting something. Courtney stepped past him, practically shoved between us. This is childish, she hissed. This is pathetic, Mel. You didn't get enough attention, so now you're trying to punish us like some kind of spoiled dictator? I blinked. Courtney, you've been using my money and my time like it was your birthright. You all have. I brought you here. I paid for everything. And you walked past me at every meal like I was the help. You excluded yourself, she fired back. No one told you to hide in your room. We were trying to enjoy ourselves. You excluded me, I said, quieter this time. Every day, every conversation, every dinner. You left without me. You spoke over me. You laughed about me. I listened to Dad tell some stranger that I didn't belong here. My dad raised his eyebrows like I was making it up. My mom looked away. And you're right, I added. I don't belong in your world. Because I built mine. You're just guests in it. That shut them up. I took one step forward. Just enough, so I wasn't hidden behind the doorframe anymore. I'm not going to cry anymore to be your doormat, I said. I've done it for years. Quietly. I've written checks and swallowed insults and smiled through it all because I thought maybe, one day, you'd see me. But you don't. You never have. And I'm done begging. The hallway was silent. Even the engine hum felt quieter somehow. Courtney looked like she wanted to scream, but couldn't find the right words. My mom looked down at the floor, her lips parted like she was about to say something, but couldn't remember what it was. My dad crossed his arms and said nothing. You can stay in the cabins I assigned you, I said finally. Or you can get off at the next port. It's up to you. I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped back inside and closed the door behind me. Locked it. Walked to the far end of the room where the piano sat untouched and pressed one key. Just to hear it. Just to prove I was still there. It was just after sunset, and the sky outside my balcony looked like it had been painted in melted sherbet. The sea was calm, the kind of quiet that made you forget there were 1,000 people floating nearby. I had just ordered dinner to the suite, not out of drama, just comfort. I didn't want to sit through another night of pretending. I'd planned on reading, maybe finishing the dessert, maybe not. I hadn't planned on the knock. It was soft, polite, hesitant. I set my book down, but didn't get up right away. My instinct was to brace, to prepare myself for a confrontation, for another round of polished guilt or veiled criticism. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Courtney with her weaponized charm or my father with his righteous silence. It was my mother. She stood there in a navy cardigan, the kind she always brought on trips when she expected evenings to be breezy. Her hair was down, no earrings, no lipstick, just her. And for once, she wasn't frowning. I won't stay long, she said. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. She didn't look around the suite like I expected. She didn't comment on the piano or the two-story windows or the wine I'd poured and hadn't touched. She walked to the armchair near the window and sat down slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. I never understood how you live, she said, her voice soft. And I don't mean your job or your company. I mean how you keep going. Alone. I stayed standing. I didn't want to be caught sitting if this turned into another act. She looked out the window, not at me. I used to think you were trying to prove something. Like all of this life you've made, was just some rebellion. But it's not, is it? It's who you are. Still, I said nothing. She clasped her hands in her lap. I saw the way the staff look at you. How they speak to you. Like you're someone who matters. Someone who built something. I don't think I've ever really seen that before. I was always too busy measuring you by what I understood. Degrees, marriages, family dinners. The things Courtney made easy for me to recognize. I felt something shift in my chest, but I kept my arms crossed. I didn't come here for an apology, she said. I don't have one ready. I probably couldn't say it right if I tried, but I wanted to sit with you, just for a minute, without telling you how to be. That was the part that got me. Not the words themselves, but the way she said them. Quiet, undressed, like she didn't come to correct, or impress, or defend herself. She came to witness, to sit. So I let her. I didn't say, thank you. I didn't ask her how long she planned to stay. I just walked over to the other chair, across from her, and lowered myself into it without a sound. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The sun disappeared completely. The lights of the next port glimmered in the distance like scattered coins on velvet. She didn't interrupt me. Not once. And I didn't forgive her. Not then. Maybe not ever. But I listened. The dining room was quiet in that heavy, formal way expensive places get when everyone's trying to act like they've always belonged there. Tinkling silverware, murmured conversations, the low clink of crystal. The farewell dinner was held on the upper deck, beneath chandeliers that looked like blown glass flowers frozen mid-bloom. The ship was anchored just outside Marseille, lights of the port city blinking across the black water like they were winking at us. I had planned to eat alone again. I had already told the staff to set my table near the windows, off to the side. I didn't want drama. I didn't need theater. I just wanted to get through the evening without tension, without noise. But when I arrived, the maitre d' told me that my family had asked to dine together, and that they'd asked to include me. I almost declined. My stomach tightened the way it always had around them. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe exhaustion, decided not to shrink back. So I sat down at the head of the table. They were all dressed nicely, in that curated vacation way. Linen jackets, silk shawls, cocktail dresses, and safe neutrals. My father nodded when I arrived. Nathan stood and pulled out my chair. My mother gave a small smile, restrained, but not cold. And Courtney, surprisingly, just said, "You look good," without a trace of irony. We went through the first two courses mostly in silence. There was no mention of what had happened. No awkward apologies. Just careful conversation about the food, the view, the captain's speech over the intercom. It was strange how normal it all felt. Not warm, but not sharp either. Then came dessert, and with it, champagne. I wasn't expecting anything. I was already planning how I'd slip out afterward. But Courtney lifted her glass before anyone else could. "I want to say something," she said. I glanced at her, wary. I wasn't the only one. Even my mom's eyebrows lifted slightly. "My sister," Courtney said, turning toward me, "is successful. Not just on paper, not just in the headlines. She's successful because she created something from nothing and didn't wait for permission. She's courageous because she spent years standing on her own feet while the rest of us judged from the sidelines." I didn't move. I wasn't breathing. "And she's finally put us in our place," she added, with a little smile that, for once, didn't feel cruel. Which, frankly, was overdue. Nathan raised his glass next, nodding toward me. "She's the only person I know who understands what it means to lead something, to carry the weight of it, and still have enough composure left to host a trip like this. I respect that." It was simple, measured, but it landed. Then my father, without lifting his glass, said quietly, "Maybe we really underestimated you." Just like that. No big speech. No emotional monologue. Just a sentence. Soft. Honest. And for a long moment, the table was still. Not uncomfortable, just quiet in that way people get when they're trying to find new footing. Like a room where the furniture's been rearranged, and everyone's figuring out where to sit now. I didn't toast back. I didn't say thank you. I just looked down at the bubbles rising in my glass and let the moment stretch. For the first time, their eyes weren't full of resentment. They weren't tolerating me. They were seeing me. And that was enough. Thanksgiving came late that year, not by the calendar, but in feeling. The leaves in Seattle were already dark and curled by the time I set the table. My house was quiet in the way I liked. Clean, deliberate, no TV blaring, no forced music to fill the air. Just the occasional sound of wind pressing against the windows and the soft tick of the oven counting down minutes on the turkey I didn't cook myself, but chose, paid for, and ordered exactly how I wanted. I didn't ask anyone what they preferred. I didn't text for allergies or diets or substitutions. There was food. There was a table. There was a time. Show up or don't. They did. My parents arrived first. My dad wore a wool coat I hadn't seen before and carried a bottle of wine in both hands, label out like a peace offering. My mom had a new scarf, light makeup, and for the first time, didn't try to walk in like she owned the place. She stepped into the foyer and paused, really looked around, at the quiet art, the black walnut floors, the sharp corners softened with time and money, and said, simply, "It's beautiful, Melissa." Courtney came next with Nathan. No kids. No lecture about child-friendly hours. Just the two of them, in coats and calm, and when she hugged me, it wasn't stiff. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't much, but it was real. No one complained about the food. No one asked if there was golf on TV. No one commented on the missing centerpiece or the modern flatware or the lack of holiday kitsch. They just sat, ate, talked. It wasn't warm, not exactly, but it wasn't cold either. It was respectful, measured, like they understood they were guests now, not owners. That was the difference. I didn't host Thanksgiving because I wanted to prove anything. I didn't do it to recapture something we never had. I did it because I could, because I finally had a life that wasn't built on reacting to them. The table was mine. The house was mine. The rules were mine. I didn't ask my mother if she wanted to sit at the head. I didn't wait for Courtney to start the conversation. I didn't hover over my father, hoping for approval in the silence between his sentences. I carved the turkey myself. After dessert, my dad stood to stretch and said, "This was a really nice evening," like it surprised him. My mother nodded and gathered their coats. Courtney said, "Next year, your house again," and I didn't flinch, because it didn't matter if they meant it. It didn't matter if they changed. What mattered was that I had stopped waiting to be let in and built something they had to knock on to enter. And this time they knocked. Not because I forced them, because I finally stopped needing them to. I'm not sure when it happened, exactly. Somewhere between the private deck in the Mediterranean and that dinner with champagne and silence, the switch flipped. I had spent so long trying to be seen, not realizing that I already was. By the world. By people who mattered. By myself. And that was enough.